"Come on, Hermie," Father said. The little dog looked up from his cuddly big brown bear, which he had just decided to use as a pillow, and looked rather puzzled. "It's not walkies time, and I had a wash last week. I wonder what delights Father has in store for me today." Then there was the familiar click of his lead being attached to his collar. "Where are we going?" Hermie inquired. Father smiled. "I am going to take you on a nostalgic ride and show you all the places I have been in the past." Hermie shuddered to a standstill. "You must be joking. The last time you took me on a nostalgic ride, I was bored witless." So Hermie made himself as heavy as possible as Father pulled on his lead. "Come on, you silly boy. You're going to love this little trip." "When you say we, I hope you're not including me, as I wouldn't mind not coming, thank you." Unfortunately, Father was determined to have a good trip, and Hermie was coming with him whether he liked it or not. Father opened the car door and pushed Hermie onto the back seat, where he reluctantly settled on his blanket. "Here you are, Hermie, a nice crunchy biscuit." Father threw a little bone-shaped biscuit over his shoulder, and it landed just in front of Hermie's mouth. "Oh, what a treat, a dry biscuit the shape of a bone. I believe I get one of these in each story, and they don't improve in desirability at all, thank you." Soon Father came up to a large hedge covered with brambles. He stopped the car and opened the door for Hermie to get out. Hermie gazed in bewilderment as Father picked a black thing from the brambles. "I thought you might like to see one of these. They are blackberries, and I picked them many years ago with my father." Hermie went a little closer to the strange berry and sniffed it. "You won't like this, Hermie," Father said as he popped it into his mouth. Delicious." "What are they for?" Hermie inquired, trying to look interested. "These are for making pies and homemade wine. But if you eat too many while picking them, they will make you feel rather sick," Father said as he popped another into his mouth. Hermie noticed Father's hands were starting to change colour from pink to black. "Why are your hands changing colour?" "Well, the more you pick them, then the more the juices run all over your hands." "Well, Father, you obviously had a very interesting time many years ago, but I'm not sure it's quite floating my boat so far," Hermie said as he pulled Father towards the car, only stopping as his lead pulled him back. "Oh, Hermie, look, you may be interested in this bush. These are sloes." "I very much doubt it, but please enlighten me with the merits of this sloe." Hermie sniggered to himself. "Well, sloes really need to be cooked before eating. They are used in pies, sloe gin, and probably some other things too." Father nibbled on one and then winced. "Ooh, a cookery lesson too. This is beyond fascination. I'm not sure if I can remember a more interesting afternoon." "Aren't you having a nice time, Hermie?" "Father, this afternoon is about as interesting as watching the water in my bowl evaporate in the sun." "Right," Father said indignantly. "I will now take you to somewhere you will find really interesting." He pulled Hermie towards the car. Hermie trotted along behind Father as they made their way back to the car ready for the next stage of their expedition. "Up we jump," Father said. Hermie hopped onto his comfy seat and settled his tired head on his soft pillow. The car drove for what felt like an eternity, mile after mile, tree after boring tree. Then suddenly the car shuddered to a halt. "Here we are." Hermie looked out of the window to see a large lake. The water looked rather enticing, and Hermie waiting patiently to be let out. "Out we jump," Father excitedly said. Hermie bounced out of the car and onto the grassy bank. He then ran towards the lake as fast as he could. "Not so fast, Hermie. It's very muddy," Father shouted as Hermie pulled as hard as he could. Father then tripped over a branch, and Hermie's lead left his grip. On he bounded towards the water, until splosh! Father hobbled over to Hermie. "Told you, silly little chap." Hermie looked forlornly at Father. "Could you help me, please?" Father looked down at the mud-bound Schnauzer. "Oh dear, what a mess you're in." Hermie looked up at Father and smiled with his biggest smile he could manage. "Is there any chance you could help me get out of this nasty mud?" "Hermie, you are such a silly boy, I am tempted to leave you where you are." Father stepped onto the mud next to Hermie. The tide was coming in, and Father knew he didn't have long to get Hermie out of this situation. "Could you hurry up? My paws are getting rather numb." "Don't worry, I will help you out. But you must be nice and calm," Father quietly said. "Calm? How could I be anything else with my legs buried so deep in the gooey mud?" Hermie grunted. Father leant down to Hermie and put his hands around his neck, as the rest of his body was now in the mud. He pulled as hard as he could, but then he felt a terrible pain shudder through his knee. "Oh no, my knee!" Father shouted as he fell forward into the sloppy mud. "Hello, Father," Hermie said as Father's head landed next to his. "What shall we do now?" Hermie asked. "Don't worry, Hermie, I will save you." Father felt his legs and arms sink deeper into the mud. It was an unusual sight to see a little dog lying in a sea of mud, smiling at his owner, who was now in the same predicament. Father eventually managed to free his arm, enough to be able to grab Hermie's collar. With an extra big pull, Father suddenly extracted Hermie from the mud. He rolled over and landed on a rock to the side of Father. "Oh, thank you, Pops," Hermie said. "Why the Pops?" Father asked as he lay in the cold mud. "I call you Pops, as you are my favourite father. I think you will find I am your only father, Hermie. Oh yes, but if there were any other fathers, you would be my favourite. Hermie, can you shut up and help me get out of here?" "Why, are you stuck, Father?" Hermie said, trying to keep a straight face. "Yes, Hermie, you know full well I am stuck, and I would appreciate it if you would pull me out." Hermie looked around and noticed his extending lead nearby. Father just managed to clip it onto Hermie's collar with his free hand. "Father, I shall now run around and around that large rock behind you to secure my lead more firmly, and then you may be able to haul yourself up." "Oh, well done, Hermie, a brilliant idea," Father said, grabbing hold of the lead with his free hand. As he wriggled about, he managed to release the other hand, and slowly the rest of him emerged, as he was able to pull harder on the lead. Hermie laughed when he saw the large, muddy brown figure walking towards him. "I don't look any worse than you," Father said to Hermie. "Let's get cleaned up, and we can go home." Hermie felt a little uncomfortable with all the mud and cold water on him. So in true doggy fashion, he removed it by shaking his body from tail to head. And as the mud and water left him, it flew in the air and landed on Father. "Thank you, Hermie," Father said as he wiped yet another splodge of mud from his forehead. Hermie smiled at Father and said, "It is my little thank you for such an enlightening afternoon with you." As he turned away from Father's gaze, he sniggered. Soon Father had cleaned most of the mud from his face and hands and headed for the car. Unfortunately, he had forgotten to release Hermie from the rock in his moment of confusion. Hermie stood watching Father hobble back to him. "Did you forget something?" Hermie sarcastically inquired. "Hermie, you will be pleased to know I have just remembered why I brought you here in the first place." "Oh, do tell, Father. I am just sitting on the edge of the rock in utter bewilderment at the thought of yet another unbelievably interesting reminiscence." Father looked down at Hermie. "Many years ago, I noticed an old rubber dinghy lying next to a dustbin where I used to live. The dinghy looked rather enticing, that I put it in the boot of my car and took Victoria, my daughter, to test it out. And it wasn't long before we came to this very spot. Did the fact that the dinghy was lying next to a dustbin not give you a clue that there may be, have not been something quite perfect about the said craft?" Hermie pointed out. "Hindsight is a wonderful thing, Hermie, but on recollection, maybe my next action wasn't the best decision I've ever made." Hermie actually looked interested. Father continued. "I took the craft from the boot of the car and laid it out on the grass, and blew it up with my pump. There were several strange sounds, but I took no notice, as I was so excited to see Victoria would enjoy her first boat ride." Hermie lay back on the grassy bank and continued to enjoy Father's wonderful story. "I then pulled the dinghy to the edge of the lake and told Victoria to jump in. As she hopped in the boat, I joined her and pushed it away from the shore. We drifted out into the lake completely oblivious to the bubbles around the outside of the rubber craft. Unfortunately, unbeknown to me, it was sinking." Father looked a little embarrassed as he continued with his rendition. "Father, at what point did you think this craft might be, rubbish?" Hermie sniggered as he twiddled the blade of grass between his muddy paws. "Oh, what happened next, Father?" "Well, it didn't go too well, I must admit. I soon noticed the firmness of the rubber was starting to disappear, and creases started to appear where I would have preferred they didn't." Hermie slyly sniggered. "I soon realized the water was taking over our little boat and started to row towards the shore as quickly as I could." "Oh, Father, you're such an idiot. I wish I'd been there to help you." "So do I, Hermie." "Oh, sorry, Father. Please forgive my sudden lack of interest, but I'm getting a little bit of cramp in my tail." "Oh, Hermie, I'm so sorry you have cramp. Whenever I get it, I am no use for anything. Please don't worry about my tale, just continue with your interesting tale." "Well, Hermie, we managed to get back safely, but I will not do anything as silly as that again, as I now realize how dangerous it could have been." "Exactly, Father. I am glad you have learnt your lesson. Anyway, Hermie, I suppose you might like to go home now to see Mummy." Hermie's eyes opened with delight. "Father, they are the best words I have heard all day. Come on, Hermie, let's go home." "Yippee!"